guys, Jeremy here with Simple Little Life, and today I just want to shoot this video on a quick set of... I apologize for the lack of videos lately. I've been really busy in the knife shop getting knives out, and I certainly owe you guys better than I feel I'm doing right now, so I'm gonna try and kick up the video production a little more and get some more stuff going. So quickly, let's get the segment of the questions and answers. I also haven't even looked at like YouTube comments for the last I don't know how long, but I'm gonna edit this video, and then while it's uploading, I'm gonna get to all of your questions and comments. I'm gonna do my best to answer them there as well, but I thought if I could put a Q&A video up, some basic knife making questions and the answers that I know or that I could help you with. So let's get right into it. The most common question I get is, where do you get your steel? It's hard for me to answer that question for you if I don't know your location, and even if I do, often it's just a matter of Googling it and looking for your specific locale where steel can be had. But I buy a lot of my steel from a website, the Canadian Knife Making Supplies Limited, I believe, knifemaker.ca. They sell a lot of different steel stock. I was there last week and I saw their steel inventory, and it's like, oh, I was a kid in a candy store, steel. And so anyways, they've got a lot of steel there. You can pick it up and order from them. Obviously the one bummer is they don't ship outside of Canada. Also, with the postal strike coming up, there may be issues with shipping. You're gonna pay a little bit more because they'll have to send them with UPS or FedEx, I think. But another place that I get my steel from is, if you just look up metalsupermarkets.com, I believe it's like 70 locations across North America. I've got one like in Calgary, and they usually have a decent selection of 01 tool steel, and they also have a few other different steels. I'm just gonna show you something quick. So this is the steel that I have right now. This is Metal Supermarkets. This is how their steel comes. It's precision ground bar stock. What that means is that it's actually been ground by a machine to exactly what they say their thickness is. So this is 3/16 by one. Also tell me. 01 is 3/16 thick by 1.25 inches. So when they say 3/16 thick, it is probably within, I would say, 3 or 4 thou, because it's precision ground. And when they say it's like 1.25 inches thick, that's also going to be within a few thou. So this is very finely finished with a machine, and that's how most, I think all of it from Metal Supermarkets comes. Now this is actually nice finish for some knives. Let's see, this one here, the blade in the works. So this is actually the precision ground finish. This knife, pretty much the same thing, but this was with the stock that's not precision ground. So you just have a little bit of just surface imperfections, a little bit of pitting in there, but is it worth the extra cost? Sometimes it could be, depends on the knife you're making. And then this is the 01 tool steel that I get from Knife Maker Supply, knifemaker.ca. This is 1/8 by 2. Obviously I don't buy just this thickness, whatever it is, but you can see the surface finish on this isn't quite as great as the precision ground. There are little imperfections, and you do need to kind of keep an eye on where you're going to cut your piece out of. Not that I've ever had unusable pieces, but lay it out, look at both sides, and make sure that, okay, this isn't going to be right where the blade is. Usually I have no issues. You know, if you have an imperfection, you can just locate it where like the tang is going to be or something like that. So that's how the stock comes from, and this stock gets water jet cut. So what it looks like, that's, I do not believe that might looks like water jet to me. So those are the two places that I know that I get steel from. I'm gonna put in the description below, I'm gonna put a link with there's a few other places in the US that have it, as well as a viewer had left in the comments a website for a place in Ireland that sells it, because everybody from Ireland says that they can't find tool steel. That's probably the biggest compliment I get, is that I don't have tool steel. So anyways, that's that. I like to have a decent stock around. I'm actually getting pretty low on steel. I've got like 5 bars for all the steel. Just check the description below, and I'll put all the links that I know of, and if you have some, leave them in the comments and I'll put them back in the description there so people can just look right there and say that's where to get some steel. Going into the kind of segues nicely into the second question, what thickness of material should you use? And a lot of this comes from when you're making it by hand, filing the bevel by hand. I'm approaching all these Q&As from a beginning standpoint, getting into knife making standpoint, and I would say at the very least, you want 1/8 inch stock if you're gonna hand file your bevel. So that is 1/8 inch stock. That would be the smallest I would go if you are hand filing your bevels. The reason being is that if you were to go thinner than that, like half of that is 1/16, you can indeed file a bevel on there. Once you get the one side down, when you're filing your first bevel, this whole side, the underside, is supported. That's fine. You can put a nice bevel on there. The problem comes when you flip it over. Now all of a sudden you've got a beveled side and it's not supported the whole way, and as you are filing, it's gonna flex that blade. Your bevel's not gonna be even. You're gonna have a really hard time getting it even. My very first knife I ever made, I did it out of 1/4 inch, and this was a hand filed bevel as well. And I was really glad that I did 1/4 inch because it's very easy to keep that bevel even. I left a lot of material on this knife, but I would say 1/8 is the smallest, and if you want, you can go up to 1/4 inch, but the thicker it is, the more material you have to remove. So, what are you doing? Come on, camera. I would say 1/8 would be the smallest. My preference would be a 3/16 for your first one when you're hand filing. That is 3/16 thick. That's my recommendations for steel when you're hand filing your bevels. Smallest I would go is 1/8, and the thickest, go as thick as you want if you don't mind filing, but 1/4 inch is pretty thick. 3/16 is a really good happy medium. Okay, third question. And this one may seem silly to people that know, but people that don't, why do you heat treat the blades? Why do you have to heat up the knife? Reason being is that tool steel and all these 1095s and these steels, they come in a state that makes them machinable. They haven't been hardened, and shape them, profile them, do everything you need to do, and right before you're ready to put your final edge on, you need to harden the blade and heat treat it so that it holds its edge properly. You can sharpen on heat treated steel and you can cut things for a while, but it's not going to be very long into using it that it's going to go dull. So harden the blade and it will hold its edge better. And there's a happy medium you need to find between a hard blade and a usable blade. What I mean is this: if I were to just put this and harden it, and this is an 01 tool steel, so you oil quench it. You can get water quenchable steels as well. Knifemaker.ca sells those. But if you were just to harden this and sharpen it and use it, you could get a really sweet edge on there, and it would hold that edge for a long time. Problem is that if you were to smack it against something or drop it, you could just fracture the blade. It becomes much more brittle. So you want to find a compromise between hard and strong and still not brittle. Think of a file. A good quality file, if you were to take it and give it a hard whap on a welding bench, it'll probably just snap in half. So that is what your file is like when it comes out of your hardening process. Whether you do that with a torch or a kiln, however you do it, it's going to be very, very hard. The next step is the tempering, which means adjusting. It's same thing with tempered glass. Tempered glass has got a little bit of flex and it's safer. As soon as you touch it, it's not just going to shatter. So there's different ways, the different recipes for different steels. That's enough of information to put in several videos, so we're not going to get into the specifics. But basically what you do is you take it up to a warmer state, and it's not nearly as hot as where you harden it, and you warm up the blade and you kind of let it sit there for a while and come up to that level, and then you cool it down. Usually pull it out of that heat and let it come down, usually like 450 degrees with 01 tool steel. Different times depending on the thickness of it. And when you cool that down, it actually will take the hardness out, and it all has to do with the grain structure and the way the molecules line up within the metal. So heat it up, cool it down to room temperature, and it makes it more malleable. So yes, it's not going to hold its edge longer, but it's also not going to shatter if you were to drop it. So that's what ultimately what heat treating a knife is finding that perfect combination of hardness so that I can whack this into trees, you know, cut whatever you're cutting, vegetables, fruits, a long time without having to resharpen, but also I don't want it to be so careful that I can't, you know, drop it, and you also want it to be somewhat flexible depending on the task you're using the knife for. But that is basically heat treating. On that, I actually just picked up an even heat kiln. Pretty excited about that. This, I've done 5 or 6 knives with this, and I'm gonna do a video on it soon. One thing that's awesome too is that this knife that I've had in the works for months, my Chupacabra, I haven't had a way to heat treat this properly yet. This also is 01 tool steel, and I can't do it with a torch because it's just too difficult to keep the whole thing evenly heated. So this fits inside of there, and I will be able to heat treat my Chupacabra. And I made this knife to kill, sorry, you might be offended by this, but to kill our chickens with, because we raise our own meat. Okay, so that's question 3, I believe. Next question. So, the most common material I use for my handles is G10. G10 is some type of it's a resin glass based product, so it's think fiberglass but not fiberglass. It certainly has nothing to do, I don't know, it's a much finer glass particles, I believe, and then some type of a resin. I always thought it was like a polymer based thing, but I don't believe it is. Again, I'm not saying this for sure, but that's what I believe. Comes like this. It's very hard, quite easy to sand, hard on cutting tools. Your saw blades and stuff, they wear out with this much quicker than they do with some type of, you know, hardwoods, even stuff like babinga and cocobolo and stuff like that. This stuff eats up your blade. This is very moisture resistant, so it's nice to have on handles. Also, there's a simple G10 liner that you use for like decorating. It's just that little decorative accent between the tang and the handle. You can use it in all very combination of ways. So that's what you use. This thinner G10, this is 1/32, I believe. So this is another space material I've used, and if you've watched some of my other knife making videos, you've seen me use this. This is a vulcanized gasket material, so some type of a fiber gasket material that's been vulcanized or rubber impregnated, I guess, and works pretty good. Fairly impervious to moisture. However, one of my knives was accidentally left out in the rain. This one here. During some meat processing activities. I wasn't the one using the knife, but this got left out in the rain, and when I grabbed it, it would have been thoroughly soaked for a few hours, and I could feel that liner, the blue liner, this is that same liner, it had expanded a little bit, and so some people don't like it for that reason. If you use something like this G10, you're not going to get moisture expansion. So lots of different colors. This is a translucent gold. Might be kind of interesting to try. This is a camel. You see you get different colors in there and stuff. So that's G10. One that I've just recently discovered that I think is amazing is this stuff. This is a 1/4" peel texture G10. I picked this up last week when I was visiting knifemaker.ca, and what it is a G10 that's got this sticker on top, and when you're all done, you can cut it, shape it, get it profiled, and then you take the top and peel it off, and you end up with this like checkered profile. This is really cool because something like this, say a fighting tanto knife, something like that, now you don't want to do a lot of material removal on the edge of your handles, but you've got really solid grip. Sorry, these have to go together. I need to acid wash this, but really cool G10. Again, you want to leave your profile of your handle fairly flat, otherwise you're just gonna grind that away, but you know, a little bit of trimming around the edges like that, and you can see that texture there. Really cool little product. I've never seen that before, and I grabbed it. I thought I was just grabbing black, and Marilyn at knifemaker.ca goes, "You know what that is, right?" I'm like, "No," and she goes, "Oh, it's peel," and so she showed me. I was like, wow, totally cool. So I bought a couple of pieces of that. Sorry, I'm rambling on about G10 here, but one of the other materials I use is micarta. Micarta, it comes in different forms. There's paper micarta, linen micarta. all it really is some type of a material like a canvas or linen. People make their own with like old jeans or camouflage material, and pretty much you layer it in resin. So you put layer upon layer upon layer, and then just some type of a press. If you look up on YouTube, there's ways to make it. I've never actually tried it yet, but I'm going to. And so this is obviously factory made micarta because it comes out flawless. But if you look at it, you can sort of see the how it looks like a material. You can see that it looks like linen, because this is a linen micarta, and then on the end as well you can see the different grain, all the grain. You can see all that grain that is basically the different pieces of material. So those are mostly what I use for my handles. This is that white G10. I love this stuff because it looks like bone. It gives you a nice classic traditional look to your knife, but works good. So that's what I use for my handle materials. Another question I get asked is whether or not I do my secondary bevel or my micro bevel on the edge blade on my belt grinder. No. And a lot of people ask if I do that after heat treat, and that is correct. Depending on the usage of the knife, you want different thicknesses. This here is a boot knife for a officer. For boot knife, this is going to be for cutting tasks or stabbing tasks. So you don't need a lot of material, whereas on one like this Chupacabra, I made this one for chopping, and I've left quite a bit of material there so that it has a lot of strength. I never sharpen my edge, put my final bevel, you could call it a micro bevel I guess, on my knife until after my sheaths are made. That way I'm done. At the point where I'm sharpening the knife, I'm done with it. I'm not going to handle it anymore. Handling knives in your shop is when you're going to get cut. You know, even when they're not sharp like this, sometimes you have them clamped to jig and you have the tip sticking out and you walk by and it's like, man, it's ridiculous. So to answer that question, no, I do not put the micro bevel on my blades with the belt grinder. Also, another question I get quite a bit is how I sharpen my knives, and I'm gonna do a separate video on that because this has been something that's plagued me for a while. Probably one of the reasons I've never done a video is because I've never had a really solid way that I do it. I use a conglomeration of things. From a work sharp, I use it basically as a belt grinder, a slack belt grinder, to those Lansky makes them. They've got the rod and the stone like this, to sandpaper, and it's always been a nemesis of mine sharpening a knife. And when I put a brand new edge on a knife, it's taken me in the past up to 2 hours on a knife. I just always thought there's gotta be a better way, gotta be a better way, gotta be a better way. These paper wheels. I didn't know for sure if these were gimmicks or what, but they are insane. Obviously this one isn't running true, but it still does a fine job. Looks like it's balanced well enough. So what you get basically is these two paper wheels. These are 8-inch version. I believe they have a 10 or 12. Take a bench grinder. I got rid of all the crap. And these can run fast. This one runs at 3600 RPM, which is what they recommend for these wheels. One wheel is impregnated with like a silicone oxide or something. And this is the wheel that puts the rough grind on, and this is the polishing one. And I will tell you this, that you can take a knife with no edge on it whatsoever and get it to razor sharp, shaving sharp, like slicing paper sharp in less than a minute. These things are unbelievable. I've got a lot of I've got Japanese water stones, I've got, you know, different machines and doodads and doohickeys, and I've looked at everything because the hardest part about making a knife to me has been getting an awesome edge on it, and this thing totally does that. So I'm pretty stoked to have this. I will do a video fairly shortly here on using that. One other tool that I picked up recently, seems like I'm on a tear for tools lately, but a Fordham. This is basically like a Dremel on steroids. This is a 1/6 horsepower motor. Comes with these awesome flex shafts. One thing that I really like about these is that they are 100% American made in Bethel, Connecticut, I believe. It's been a childhood dream of mine to own one of those. I've been using a Dremel, a very cheap Dremel, for a long time. So I went out and bought this Fordham, and I'll tell you what, man, for stuff like this is what I'm using it for, doing a lot of handle work. It's fantastic. I'm trying to think if there's any questions else off the top of my head. Maybe I should actually start writing these questions down and then formalize these Q&As so that I can actually be to the point. Oh, I showed it in a recent video. Somebody asked if my fingers say work hard, stay humble. Yes, they do. Work hard, stay humble. It's kind of like my life motto. That's what I try and live by. Those two things are quite important to me. Other than that, that's pretty much it. Got a few knife making videos I'd like to get going, and then I'm going to be doing some more stuff on not necessarily knife making, but some projects and stuff like that. So I'm going to try and get videos up better than I have like for the last 2 weeks. I apologize for that, guys. I really feel bad, but I have been slammed in the shop getting knives out, and I still am. Ultimately, you know, I want to do videos. I enjoy doing videos, and you just have to make it a priority, make time for it. So if you have any other information about where to buy tool steel, a website, that would be sweet, especially European countries, countries within the UK, because those seem to be really difficult places to buy steel. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you find it helpful, and if you have any other questions, please let me know. I will always do my best to try to answer them. Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.